Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my AM reading video for Friday, June 12th, 2026, going up on a Saturday, and also filmed on a Saturday yet again. Oh, I don't like it, especially because, that means I'm cramming to hopefully get a lot done this morning. We shall see. But last week was busy. Work was a bit hectic. That's a really easy excuse for me. Also, I admit that I wanted to wrap up some reading yesterday night to talk about today. And finally, which I finished up yesterday morning, I have my May literary newsletter to share. I'll link to it down below. It includes snippets from all of the Goodreads reviews that I wrote for last month. I have a lot of literary news that caught my attention. I have a book pick. I have a book quote. So check it out. Getting into the good stuff, I start these AM reading videos by reviewing a short story in a literary journal. And currently I am reading from this anthology called Frankly Feminist, and this is short stories that were published by Jewish women for the Jewish women's magazine Lilith. And the story I read this week is News to Turn the World by Katie Singer, and I'm keeping it open to see if I could try to get out a tiny bit of Yiddish. We shall see. But this story takes place in 1917, and from the offset, we realize by a lot of name dropping that this family that we're following is a very large family, and we're hearing from one of the oldest girls of the family. She and her mother are doing a little bit of canning, and the unnamed narrator, I think she's unnamed, but anyway, she has a lot of sisters, and so she names off who's gone off with one of the girls outside and who's running around their feet. Later we learn that the family's also taking care of two nephews whose mother died of tuberculosis. And into this, the mother tells the daughter in Yiddish, her name is Estelle, so that's her name, the daughter. She says, "Ich hob nice was ken überkern die Welt." Let's hope I didn't butcher that too much, but that's the title. I have news to turn the world upside down. And that news is that she is pregnant again. And this makes this girl Estelle very unhappy, because it seems like she might be the oldest, or in any case, she's of an age where she is a major caretaker for the family. They just moved to Cleveland from New York, which is a bigger house, but they still only have 3 rooms, and the father's work has been a little up and down, although the move to Cleveland was supposed to help with that, because they came following news from family about job openings and all that. But still, we're talking, really strained situations to bring a new baby into an already 10-person household with 3 rooms. So yeah, and Estelle's already thinking about how this could impact her future, which I read about actually in a book, Gittle's Happiness, that I read last month, which, was about how less childbirth, but childbirth to a certain extent, but also the Great Depression and various things about just financial straits leave women with limited options. Estelle also wants to get an education, or maybe wants to be a bookkeeper, which actually Kittle did. But, those doors are closing on her if she has to help take care of another child for, this growing family. And she finds very few ways to have any moment to herself, and one of those moments is taking baths, and she talks and compares them to the mikveh, which in Judaism for women often is about the menstruation cycle, and about cleaning yourself after it, and it's about trying to not only purify yourself but make yourself fertile, because technically, religiously speaking, be fruitful and multiply is a big thing. And so she's thinking about that and how she doesn't actually want that when she's married. And she's also thinking of Rosh Chodesh, which is the beginning of the month ceremony, which is also tied to women and menstruation and sort of beginning anew again. It's a little more personal, I think, than giving birth. And into this, her mother knocks on the door and asks Estelle to stay home from school the next day to start Shabbos and take care of the kids. So it almost feels like it's already starting again. The mother can't take care of her whole life because she has too much on her plate, and Estelle's being asked to step up. But it turns out that the mother has decided that this is too much. She has too many children, that she has too much on her plate, and she is going to go to the doctor for an abortion, which, in that time period is a rather fraught thing to do, because the scientific procedures that, not only were illegal, so you had to, back alley it, but also, it just wasn't developed enough yet to be as safe as it is now for the mother. But that's what she decides to do, and Estelle's in the position then of taking care of the family in the stead. When her mother comes home, she has to go to bed. She's sick, and so she's taking care of her father and the other kids. And her mother talks about hearing from the spirit of one of her children who was miscarried, basically, as this was happening. So there's, I guess, a lot of influence about what it is to get rid of a child, and what it is to be so close to death, and like the angel of death and all of that. And so yeah, I thought it was a just an evocative, haunting tale. There isn't actually a whole lot of Yiddish in here. I think Singer wanted to use it like to make a point. So another Yiddish phrase is "Es ist zu silver zu seine Freu," which is, it is too difficult to be a woman sometimes. Okay, and the book I just finished yesterday is The Faith of Beasts by James S.A. Corey. This is a science fiction sequel novel, which I listened to on audio. And anyway, I'm very excited about it. I'm excited to be reading any science fiction. I feel like I've been rather sporadic with my science fiction and fantasy, my speculative reading this year. Some of it I think is just par for the course, and I just tend to get into more science fiction and fantasy later in the year. But this is a title that definitely was on my radar. It is the sequel to The Mercy of the Gods, which is sort of jammed in right over there. It's James S.A. Corey's second sci-fi series that I've read, the first one being The Expanse, which is one of my favorite series, is certainly one of my favorite TV adaptations of all time. This one takes us to a more space opera sort of setting than The Expanse. But this story is also a bit of a downer for the human race. Actually, it takes place in a time when humans don't live on Earth, but there's hints that maybe that's where we started out. But now humans did live on the planet of Ajian until alien contact had rather dire circumstances or dire results. The Carracks are this sort of multi-armed, multi-eyed fighting force that easily conquer the planet, kill an eighth of the population, and enslave the rest to see what use humans can be to their empire. So the first book is sort of about we're following a scientific research group of biologists, and they are set to a task about trying to find a food source for another alien group. And basically it's a large test to show that humans have any utility. There's other human groups with other specialties and experts who are experts in them that are doing other things for the Carracks to see if they can use those skills. But by the second book, the Carracks have sort of zeroed down to the types of industries that would help, their forever war. They are a forever warring alien species. Who have enslaved a bunch of other alien species as well that the humans are now living with on the alien world, on one of their alien worlds. So the second book takes the group of scientists we've been following and splits them up a fair bit. And our main character, Daffyd, kind of goes from being sort of a low-level grunt in a way to actually the voice of the Carracks, because he's the one, I think, who's able to sort of adapt the most to their needs and their understanding, and he's doing that to try to save, humans and keep on proving that we can be useful so that the Carracks won't just wipe us out. But it does mean that he has to act more and more inhuman to do it. And meanwhile, he is trying to privately inculcate some sort of, multi-year rebellion. It makes me think, I think this is supposed to be a shorter series of The Expanse, but at the same time, it seems ripe. A lot of the sort of niggles in this story seem ripe for a 30-year time jump like The Expanse had. And this sort of rebellion feels like it would take a long time, and it could take generations. So we'll have to see what book 3 will bring, I suppose. So that is what Daffod is doing, and then we follow some of his other former, colleagues as they're sent onto spaceships and onto foreign conquered worlds to try and find out more information about the deathless enemy that the Carricks are fighting. And they find out some pretty shocking things and about what this deathless enemy is and who's involved with them. And also into this, there's a spy who is called the Swarm, which is basically like a body snatcher, a mechanical body snatcher who in the last book and this book has been taking residence inside some of the biologists in the story. And this body snatcher called the Swarm, I mean, he's supposed to be a spy, sending things back to the deathless enemy, but as this creature lives within humans, the creature starts to basically want to be human too and get his own identity. So in a way, I found that sort of the most fascinating, the most sort of commentary on like a different type of transhumanism, the most alien. The Carricks, in a way, I don't feel like, I mean, they're that alien. They are, but their motivations are sort of like expansionism and greed writ large. Basically, that's all they are. In a way that, is relatively emotionless, but, I think, like, the way that they interact with the universe just speaks to, sort of ideas that we find in, conquest and fascism. And so it's not as alien, I think, as it might appear. It's very deadly, especially in this case. And it means that, trying to stay human among all that, or trying to, have the best of humanity among all of that, like democracy or, freedom, it doesn't fare that well. But, humans continue to strive for that as well. I actually really liked where Daffod was sitting. He basically is a middle manager between two groups of people that don't understand or like each other, so that's also very relatable to me. Granted, his circumstances are a lot more fraught than mine in this job, but anyway, I really like the story. I've been a fan of these writers and their world building and their themes. I do think this series might go to Amazon Prime like The Expanse did as an adaptation, so I think it'd be interesting to watch it. It would be different because actually I watched most of The Expanse TV series before I started reading the books, and it would be the more traditional case in this way of reading the books first. But anyway, we'll have to see how that goes in the future. And the final book I'll mention here is Marry Me by Midnight by Felicia Grossman. This was my BookTube spin pick from the last time I played my quarterly TBR game, where, I had a list of 20 books that I gave each a numeral to, and then I spun a numeral wheel, and this is the book that the wheel landed on. And this is Jewish romance that I think could work for me, but I'm not that far into it yet. Frankly, I'm reading this book physically, but, like maybe some romances, it's a very small book and, pretty thick as well, especially because of how small the pages are. And I do a lot of physical reading during the week while I'm eating lunch, and I find it very difficult, to keep this book open and to dip into my lunch over here, and then of course I have to keep an eye on the clock when I'm at work to get back to work. So, I don't feel like I've gotten into it as much as I'd hoped to by this point, but I'm still pretty hopeful about it, and I'm hoping over the weekend I'll just have much more, pronounced time to just sit down and, finish this one up in hopefully a fun sitting, because this is, after all, a Jewish romance. And it's a Regency romance. We are in London in the 1700s, I believe it is. And we are following these two characters in a gender-bent Cinderella retelling. Isabel Lyra is this scion of a wealthy Sephardic family. Her father had a business that did very well, but he died pretty recently. He only has her as an heir. And meanwhile, another Jewish family of his business partners, the men in it, want to basically take over the business. And she doesn't want that. She wants, to be her father's legacy and take over the business for herself. So the question is, how does she do that as a woman in Regency England? And the answer is that she'd have to control her own marriage and make sure that whoever she married, maybe she had some leverage over to make sure he did what she wanted in the business. So into this scheming, I think she's thinking up a ball that is around the time of Pesach and the counting of the Omer and a lot of Jewish festivals around this time. But the ball, of course, is a nod to Cinderella. And she finds Aaron Ellenberg, who is from a very different social class, but he is an Ashkenazi Jew, a much more recent immigrant to England because he and his family fled from France as Prussia was taking over, fearing, pogroms and anti-Jewish violence. He is basically a pauper. He's an orphan. He's tried several professions and basically got kicked out of all of them. So now he is a lowly, synagogue cleaner that she stumbles into at the synagogue. And she decides that he can be her eyes and ears. I mean, of course, well, this book moves pretty fast already. And so they've had a lot of flirtation. It's kind of like she's the sort of spicy, fun one, and he's a little more dour and down to earth. But she decides she wants to use him to sort of spy on the men that she's courting to see what, dirt he can get on them and how it can help her aims. And he's hesitant at first, but she then offers him a very nice sum of money that could really, change his own fortunes. So that's where we are basically right now. Things are about to start ramping up. There have been a couple of other Cinderella allusions, although this isn't, a straight retelling and there's no, magic. But there is Aaron, quietly taking care of mice and cats, in his tenement. And also one of his neighbors is sort of this elderly woman who dispenses advice and disappears a little bit like magic. So I think we know what type of role she's going to continue playing in this story. But I'll be reporting back. And that about covers it for me now. Hopefully I've kept things a little short and sweet because, like magic myself, I'd like to get moving into other things and get through my day here. We are already almost halfway through June, and I hope your reading is going well. I'm looking forward to maybe slowing down a bit. I'm taking these next 2 months off of the BookTube prize, so it's a little bit less of an external pressure on me, but I have plenty of other reading goals I want to get to, namely into a bunch of new releases I want to try out, and then there's other, goals that I try to meet month per month in terms of readathons and what have you, so still have a lot to look forward to here. And I also have BookTube content to look forward to posting as well, so expect me back on this channel in the next couple of days with my Author's Answer series. This is a monthly series of videos I do based off of Q&A that J.D. Archer, an author-tuber, and his writing group did some years ago, so stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.